Science has in fact discovered God, and you can talk to the hardline atheists and they will say, it looks like science has indeed discovered God. How are we going to have this idea, is there a God or not? Notice that the creation force isn't the three-letter word God. If you look at the words carefully, it's a quantum fluctuations. So look what science has discovered. We can create the universe from absolute nothing, provided we have the forces of nature. Now the laws of nature, the forces of nature aren't physical, they act on the physical. So if they create the universe, that means they predate the universe. So now we have a set of forces, we call them the laws of nature, that are not physical, that are able to act on the physical. They create the physical from absolute nothing. And they predate the universe, which means they predate our understanding of time. Put that together, it sounds very familiar. If you haven't noticed it, that's the biblical definition of God. There's only one nuance that's left hanging. We can talk about it another time perhaps. It's that which created the universe, those forces active in the universe. But up to that point, science says, you are correct. The definition of the biblical God is predates time, outside of time. God is not a physical being, is a force, and it creates the universe. You'll notice at the opening chapter of Genesis, the only name for God is Elohim, God as manifest in the universe. Science has indeed discovered the biblical God, or we just need one part left, crucial. That which created the universe is also active in the universe itself. The very fact that you're watching this now pretty much establishes that point.
Some people say, how can it rain for 40 days and flood the world? He said, Mount Everest is 29,000 feet high. I said, yep, you're right. He said, in order for it to rain that much, it would have to be, X number of inches of rain per day for 40 days. And it can't rain that much. The atmosphere won't hold that much. Plus, as atmospheric moisture turns to water, it releases heat. And he said that much moisture to produce that much rain to cover Mount Everest would produce so much heat, it would completely destroy the earth from the heat. I said, you're absolutely right. It's important to note, though, that the flood was not caused by the rain. Look what it says. The fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. The water that used to be under the crust of the earth came to the surface. Now, if you take a nice big juicy grape, set it out in the sun, let it dry out. The moisture inside the grape leaves. The skin of the grape stays the same size, only it wrinkles up, right? If there was water under the crust of the earth and it came to the top, the crust would fall down a little bit, causing a slight wrinkling effect. Same surface area now has to be wrinkled up in some of the waters on top in big puddles that we call oceans. It just came to the surface, that's all. If you look at the country of Turkey, at the far right-hand side, you will see a mountain called Mount Ararat. It is 12 miles from the Russian border. On a Turkish map, it's called Noah Ungamshi, which means Noah's big boat. That's the name of the region. They've got signs, you drive right up to it. In 1978, there was an earthquake, and either it lifted up or the ground dropped down. I don't know, the result's the same. It is now sticking up out of the ground about 18, 20 feet. But radar scans show that there are deck timbers, some kind of huge timbers in there. They find iron rivets in there. The ark was bolted together. They knew about iron back then, not a problem. You can see some of the rivets at the Wyatt Museum south of Nashville, Tennessee. It used laminated wood, 3 layers of wood glued together with a tar-like substance, pitch made from tree sap. And there's no grain in the wood. Interesting. It's almost like the trees didn't have growing seasons. Apparently the ark landed close to Mount Ararat, got stuck in the mud. Everybody got off and left, and at some time later there was a mud flow or a lava flow that pushed the ark down and broke the bottom off. And the ark has apparently moved down several miles from where it used to be. It used to be way over here at the left at a little village called Kazan, which in Turkish means village of 8. Village of 8. Now wait a minute. There was 8 people on that boat.
Best way to prove the existence of God is by using math. This is going to blow your mind. Let's go ahead and play it.
Many atheists think there's no reason to believe in God because we have science to explain everything in the universe. It's true that science is able to explain the natural world, that's what it's for, but by definition, science cannot tell us whether there's anything outside or above the natural world. In other words, whether there's anything supernatural. Generally, when people speak of God, they mean a supernatural, all-knowing mind who is everywhere and can do anything. So what is math, and what does it have to do with God? Math is about numbers and information about those numbers and ways numbers connect to each other, but where do we find all this math? We can't see math, we can't touch math, we can't taste math. Math is only in the mind. We find it simply by thinking about it and figuring more and more things out. But wait, math also explains things. Math can explain everything from simple counting to the movement of planets. For anything you can think of, there's a bunch of math that explains what's going on, even down to the atomic level. So if math is only in our minds, but it also explains the natural world, then where does it come from? There's two possibilities, really. One is that math is just something we invented to explain what we observe in the natural world, and that would mean the origin of math is natural. But the other possibility is that math is already there because it controls the universe, and we've discovered it, and if that's true, then the origin of math is supernatural. Here's why the latter option is correct. Math contains infinite information. There's an infinite number of numbers, each with their own individual properties, and there's an infinite number of numbers in between any two numbers. And we keep discovering things. Pi, which is the number that explains the area of a circle, has an infinite number of digits that we keep discovering by doing calculations. If we were just making this stuff up, we could make pi be whatever we want it to be, but we can't do that because we know that that's not true. We know that all this information is out there somewhere, but it can't be in our physical universe because our universe is finite and math is infinite. That means math contains every possible combination of numbers, and if we use numbers as code for letters, then math contains every possible combination of letters as well. That means every book that has ever been written already exists encoded in math somewhere. In fact, every book that possibly could be written already exists in math. And if we use numbers as code for particles and their locations, then you could say there's an exact copy of our universe encoded in math. But there's also more stuff in math, so that's why math can't possibly be contained just within our universe. But that's just the beginning. There's many pieces of evidence in math to show that math has a designer. Here's an example. One time someone discovered that this simple equation makes a very interesting shape when you graph it in the complex plane, and this is called the Mandelbrot set. But people have analyzed this shape and have found some very scary things about it. What's amazing about the Mandelbrot set is that you can zoom in infinitely and you'll keep finding new things. Over here you can keep finding more and more copies of the Mandelbrot set no matter how far you zoom in. You could even zoom in really close to something like this, and it takes a while, but look, there's another little baby Mandelbrot set. Alternatively, you could go into this region and find completely different things. On the left side of this thing, you'll find these weird elephant-shaped things that have spirals that go on forever, and you could even zoom into the side of one of the spirals and find new spirals that repeat infinitely and keep generating new infinite patterns like this. Or you could go on the other side of the elephants and find these weird seahorse-shaped things that have different kinds of spirals that are connected to each other, and once again, they keep going on forever. You can zoom in infinitely, and you'll keep finding new patterns, but like I said, it's a different type of pattern. Seriously, anytime you explore the Mandelbrot set, you can find brand new things, possibly things that no human has ever seen before, because like I said, there is infinite complexity and infinite information in this one shape. That's why this little shape is so scary. We did not invent this because we discovered it by accident, but we did not discover it in our universe. It has infinite complexity, so it can't possibly be in our universe because the universe doesn't have infinites. We discovered it just by calculating it. So where the heck did this thing come from? Basic common sense says that someone designed this, but no human designed it. Like we said, math only exists in the mind, so its origin must also be a mind. Math contains infinite information, so this mind must be all-knowing. Math controls the universe, so this mind must also be all-powerful. And math is beyond and outside of our natural world, so this mind must be supernatural. And we have just described God. All these numbers and mathematical facts exist in the infinite mind of God, but it's not just mathematical truth that exists in the mind of God, but also moral truth and any kind of truth at all. Goodness, truth, and beauty are just mere opinions of the human mind, unless there is a supreme mind, God, who overrules all human opinions.
and I collected about 3/4 of that little canister full of this dried blood. We had this analyzed. We put an amount of this blood in some normal saline and at body temperature, and we swirled this gently for 72 hours. When we put this in a growth medium for another 72 hours and put it under a microscope, the white blood cells were dividing. We were able to get a chromosome count. There were 24 chromosomes. 23 Christ got from Mary. He got one, which was the sex determinant, or the Y, from his heavenly Father, for a total of 24. All of us have 46. We get 23 from our mother and 23 from our father. Now, this blood, folks, was still alive after almost 2,000 years. The people that did the test thought I had pulled a fast one of some kind on them. Never in their lives have they ever seen any dried blood that was still alive.
That's what you think.
Did you know that this scientist found proof of God in your DNA? Watch this.
When we make the connections between the letters of the ancient alphabets, the numbers they represent, those numbers, if we look at them on the periodic table, they happen to be precisely the elements that make the DNA in our bodies. Now, we have the ability to take the sequences of DNA in a cell and through those numbers link them to letters in ancient alphabets. And lo and behold, the letters spell words and the words have meaning. There is a message, an intentional message within the DNA of all life. The top layer in the DNA of all life literally translates into the words God eternal within the body. God eternal within the body.
If you believe the evidence, subscribe for more.
Your eyeball's amazing. You know, at the back of your eye, there are 137 million light-sensitive cells in 1 square inch, called your retina. All of them wired straight to the brain. How would you like to hook up 137 million electrical connections in 1 square inch? You know, your eyeball's amazing. It would take a minimum of 100 years of Cray computer time to simulate what takes place in your eye many times every second. Eyeballs are amazing. But this textbook says, the complex structure of the human eye may be the product of millions of years of evolution. Why doesn't God get the glory for what he did? If painting is proof there was a painter, even if you never see the guy. A building is proof there was a builder, and a watch is proof there was a watchmaker, and design, the creation, is proof there was a creator. See, design simply demands a designer, period. The invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen. They are without excuse, the Bible says. There's no excuse. The psalmist said, when I consider the heavens. You know, God knows that the study of science will draw us to him. Satan knows that too. So Satan has worked really hard in the field of science to make sure it pushes kids away from God. Many civilizations after the flood would arise very quickly. If you got a bunch of smart people, Noah's sons, having, 15, 20 kids per family or whatever, and they're going to go off to this area and they're going to build their own civilization. Well, it wouldn't take them long as they've got high IQ. They might not have all the technology. They might have to make stone tools at first, until they can dig a hole to find the iron to melt it down to make the steel tools. They would know how to do it. It's kind of a Gilligan's Island situation. But within 50 years, you could build a civilization. You look at Robinson Crusoe, lands on an island. Say after 20 years, he's got a whole, got a farm, got a house, got a fort, did it all himself, So yeah, it doesn't, especially you get smart people in situations like that, you can build a civilization in a hurry. It's interesting, if you study history, all of the ancient civilizations, the Babylonians, the Sumerians, the Greeks, they all, or the Chinese, they just arose out of nowhere. Poof, there's a civilization. There's no evidence of this stuff they teach in school, of them going from hunters and gatherers and grunts and groans, caveman stuff, becoming civilized and building cities. There's no evidence of that. Farther back you go, it's all of a sudden, poof, there's the beginning of the Egyptian civilization, the beginning of the Chinese civilization, just like they moved in and built it. This iron pot, we've got a model of it here, was found inside a lump of coal. This is a replica. You can get a replica from Carl Baugh. They're breaking open a lump of coal, and there's an iron pot inside. They examine the coal that comes out, and it's molded right to the pot on both sides. I mean, the coal formed around the iron pot. What would you conclude? That a coal miner dropped it? No, because then the coal won't be conformed to the pot. I would conclude that they had iron and were making iron vessels before the flood. During the flood, they got buried in a forest of trees and squished and turned to coal, and of course it's not going to affect the iron any. How do you get an iron pot and a lump of coal? Ancient man must have been smart, not primitive. In Peru, they've got giant stone walls like the one in the picture here. These stone walls are phenomenal. Some of the rocks in there are so huge, we can't even move them today. One of the stones down in Peru weighs 20,000 tons. Now, to give you an idea how big that is, the largest crane on Earth today can lift 3,000 tons. I think they just built one in Japan, if I recall, for unloading ships. I just heard about it in 2003 or 4, that can lift 6,000 tons. What is truly impossible about the block is that it's the size of a 5-story house and weighs 20,000 tons. We have no combination of machinery today that could dislodge such a weight, let alone move it. We can't even break it loose from the ground, let alone move it. Can't do it. This is a little zinc and silver vessel, was found inside rock, supposed to be 600 million years old. There's a great article in The Puzzle of Ancient Man about the little device found in a ship that was sunk in 100 BC in the Aegean Sea, which is right next to Greece. Okay? It's got an analog computer on board. How on earth did they know about analog computers in 100 BC? It's called the Antikythera device, Antikythera mechanism. The History Channel in March of 2005 was amazing. It had a whole hour-long message about this Antikythera device found in Greece. They actually built a working model of it and said this thing, by turning the crank, would be able to predict where the planets would be or the sun would be. It'd be like an amazing computer for ships navigating. 100 BC. No, ancient man was not primitive. Here's what they don't tell you about Pangaea. Africa was shrunk 35 to 40% for the drawings. Mexico and Central America are completely gone. Here's a map of Pangaea from McGraw-Hill Earth Science, 1973. Where's Mexico? Where's all of Central America? I mean, I've been to most of those, or many of those countries, flown over all of them. Some pretty good size. So they just simply take them out because it makes the continents not fit. So anything that, makes a theory not work, well, let's eliminate it. It's just not, that's not the way science works. They also don't tell you, Europe and South America were rotated counterclockwise. Africa was rotated clockwise. Notice the way they would have to twist to make them fit. South America twisted one way, Africa twisted the other way. They also don't tell you the obvious. To me, I don't know how anybody can overlook this one. If you take the water out of the oceans, there's dirt underneath. Isn't there? I mean, when you look at a world, you say, wow, this is water, this is land. Well, that doesn't mean there's nothing under the water, right? I bet you could point out that the opposite sides of most rivers in the world are parallel, right? Does that prove the sides broke apart? No, it's a low place full of water. That's all it is. So the continents are not floating around like lily pads in a bathtub, okay? They are connected. They're, people say, you think the continents were once connected? I say, what do you mean? They're still connected. It's underwater, but so, they're still connected. What do you mean, were they connected? Yeah, they still are.
Moments when God...
That are like, okay, well, how do you know that it's like Christianity's God? There's only one God. But there's a very famous astronomer named Robert Jastrow. His credentials as a scientist are impeccable. Being agnostic, he's not even a Christian. He said that all of the essential elements of the Big Bang Theory line up with biblical creation. Because this is how God works. God speaks something, and then science runs to catch up with what he said. Science doesn't create anything. Science studies creation. Let me just answer a question that I always get. Who created God? What'd I say? I said everything with a beginning. Everything that came to be needs a cause. God didn't come to be. God is eternal, the way a lot of people thought the universe was until science disproved it. So God doesn't need a cause or a creator. He is the cause. The universe is the effect. Don't just take my word for it. Go look into it for yourself. One more thing. Evidence is not a substitute for faith. Following God is not a matter of evidence or proof. It's a matter of the will. You have to want to do it so you can have the peace that you're looking for. And if you don't want to make that choice, no amount of evidence is going to convince you to. You have to want to.